Hello, everyone. This is David Stark from WatchAPass.com, your website for movie interviews, reviews, and recommendations. Today, I'm joined by Luke Eve, the director of I Met a Girl, a new romantic drama comedy that deals with some mental issues and a very interesting journey through Australia. We're going to talk to Luke in just a second, but first, here's the trailer.
Love. That's the dream, right?
Hey, I'm Lucy. I just want to know everything about you now. Today, in this moment, where we're both meant to be.
And we say, hey, hey.
It's like you're from a fairy tale. Like I've dreamt you.
Up and at 'em.
So we planned for you to meet her. She suggested this amazing Thai place.
Devon, it's been way over an hour.
Maybe something happened to her.
This is it. Devon!
She's not here. Oh my God, what happened to her? What do you want me to say? You're sick. You know that you're sick.
Hey, Devon.
She is real. She's as real as you and I. And if she isn't, then...
Hey, Luke, can you hear me?
Hey, David, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. Can you hear me okay? Would you prefer me to put some headphones in or something, or am I okay?
No, this works perfectly. Yeah, this sounds better than normal, actually. So if you want headphones to make it easier, by all means, but this actually works pretty well.
Cool. No, if it's good for you, I'm happy.
Awesome.
All right.
Well,
How's it going? How's your weekend?
It was good. It was good. Yeah, so we were out for a bit, but I got to watch your movie, and I really enjoyed it, and I'm really happy to talk to you more about it.
Yeah, I was excited when April sent me a message that you were keen to chat. So that's good.
Okay, so the movie
weekend.
I Met a Girl. This is Luke Eve, the director of the film. So this movie is set in Australia. Did it come out in Australia a little bit ago and then was just released recently in America?
No, normally it probably would have happened that way, but because of COVID, it's kind of thrown everything into a bit of a spiral. So we were meant to premiere at a big festival in Australia about a month or so ago, but that had to be postponed, and then Gravitas in the US picked it up, and we decided to release it in the US before we actually have released it anywhere else in the world. So, and it was meant to be a cinema release in the US as well, but obviously with everything that's going on, it made sense to release it as a VOD release.
Well, that's I guess, sad for Australia and everyone else, but good for America.
Yeah, I was kind of happy about it in a way, in that, like, it's a little bit messed up in that, obviously it would have been great to share it with sort of cast and crew and Aussie audiences who obviously, would know Brenton really well, the lead actor, and also Glenn and Adam and myself, the sort of team behind it. We'd have a bit of an audience there, but so sadly they have to wait for it'll be sort of mid next year in Australia. But in the meantime, it's just great that it's out in the US and Canada.
So is the plan to keep it for a theatrical release in Australia, and just kind of have it be out in a couple other territories?
Yeah, that's correct. So I know that it's definitely planned for a theatrical release in Oz, and it will probably be around sort of mid next year. But I know that we've also, sold it into Russia and South Korea and a few other markets, and that was also with the intention of a cinema release as well. So, and we have a sales agent working on it to release it in other parts of the world as well. So hopefully, not too far away, it'll be in other places as well, which is good.
Yeah, that's kind of sad for the Australian market, but I do agree with you that this does feel like a movie that kind of needs to be in cinemas. Some of the visuals are really bright and beautiful, and the music is fantastic. So it's probably a good first place to see it.
Yeah, I agree. Well, thank you for that. But yeah, it's a little, I guess it's always slightly disheartening. You're sitting in a giant mixed theater and putting the finishing touches on a movie, and then people are watching it on, iTunes or their phones or whatever. But look, at this point in time, it's been such a tumultuous year. I'm just happy that audiences finally get to see it. So no matter how they watch it, I'm happy.
Yeah, it's been such a tumultuous year that it's nice to have something bright and cheery. Although the movie isn't 100% cheery, but the overall style is. It has this very kind of bright aesthetic that I love. These colors and these shots, and maybe that's partly just because Australia is such a beautiful place. But it felt like there was a lot of light in this film.
Yeah, and look, it's funny. I think a lot of Australian films have like a really muted, desaturated palette, and I often find that a lot of modern films do in a way, and it's almost uncool to have like really bright colors. But I felt like, because it was a story about the depiction of mental illness, and a lot of the research that we had done was, you get these like really heightened senses, and I really wanted color to play a big part in that. And also often for people with schizophrenia, color is like a real trigger as well. So not only will it trigger an event, it is also the way they perhaps experience a particular episode as well. So we knew from the start, or I knew from the start visually, that I just really wanted color to be a prominent feature throughout the film. And that, goes all the way through costuming and set design, and then, we're blessed in Australia by some beautiful big landscapes, some sort of big red earth and blue skies and things like that, which really sort of played into the aesthetic and the palette that we were going for.
Definitely. So, let's talk more about the film in a second. But I just first want to know, kind of how did you find this film? Was it something that, have you worked with the writer before, or is it something that just kind of fell across your desk that sounded good?
I would love for a project just to fall across my desk. As a director, we always kind of dream of just a project falling across our desk, but
this is perfect. Exactly.
No, so I had known. It's a bit of a long story, but I'll try and keep it short. So the producer Adam and I went to film school together about 10, 13 years ago, something like that. And Adam has a twin brother, Glenn, who is a writer, and he had this project, and he'd been working on it for a long time. Like it was actually something that he'd written about 10 or 15 years ago. So it was kind of circulating around. He had used it when he first moved to LA as a bit of a spec script to get picked up and represented. And then it actually was in the hands of another director or another couple of directors before it then came to me. Adam and I and Glenn were, we were sort of close. And then when the project became available and I'd become sort of interested through a number of different reasons in sort of stories about mental health, I felt like it was a great opportunity to look at the project again. I'd previously read it many years ago, but it was sort of in the hands of someone else. So we sort of talked about it and thought that it was the sort of perfect vehicle. Glenn and I have very similar sensibilities, and it just struck me as like a really interesting story. And I'm a real sucker for romance and love, and the script had plenty of that. And also, it was tackling mental health, which I'd become very interested in. A couple of years earlier, I had done a web series called Low Life, which is like a semi-autobiographical story about a 30-year-old guy with depression. And then that then led into a follow-up series called High Life, which was about a young girl with bipolar. And because Glenn and I had already started working on this project together, I brought Glenn on board that web series. And so I also then asked Adam to come on board as the producer. So the three of us went ahead and made this digital series that then ended up becoming really popular and really successful. And we sold it all around the world, and it screened back in Australia, in the US, and on BBC in the UK. And that was sort of really instrumental in sort of getting momentum behind this to then get I Met a Girl off the ground. So there was a number of stages. All up, it was like a sort of 5 or 6 year journey, I guess. So not quite the same as having a project land on my desk, but probably more rewarding for it in a way. And also nice to be able to make a project with a couple of guys that I had previously made a project with, and that we have a good bond. So
yeah, definitely. It's interesting that you kind of had those earlier series to kind of touch on mental issues before kind of having this big, long involved story.
Yeah.
And so, that's interesting that this is also dealing with mental illness, and you've had some, mental illness films in the past. I guess schizophrenia is different from depression. Maybe it's similar to bipolar. I'm obviously I have not much exposure in this area. So, I guess what was it like tackling that issue versus some of the previous issues?
Yeah, I think your comment is sort of perfect in a way in that schizophrenia is incredibly complex and complicated, and often gets misdiagnosed as bipolar as well, and vice versa. Whereas I feel like there's quite a lot of literature and cultural works around sort of depression and bipolar to a degree. So I wouldn't say they were easier. I mean, we still did a lot of research. Glenn in particular is really big on research and taps into a lot of his own sort of personal stories about a friend growing up who his best friend, as he was growing up, sadly had bipolar and took his own life. And it sort of really shaped Glenn as a person, but also him as an artist. And this is where this story sort of came from. And when I got the script, it was really interesting because I feel like my previous work in terms of dealing with the mental health side of things was a little bit more of a sort of hard-hitting portrayal of those illnesses in a way. Whereas this was a look at schizophrenia, but, within the context of a love story, and also trying to make a story that was maybe slightly more accessible and also quite positive. And so it was really difficult to juggle the tone of trying to explore a really complex and complicated mental illness, such as schizophrenia, but house it in a place that is also one of love and warmth and romance. So it was a really tough line to walk. But Glenn had done a bunch of research, and so had I. I watched a couple of TED Talks from people that had schizophrenia and read a number of books. We reached out to a couple of organizations in Australia as well, to get in touch with people that had schizophrenia so that we could talk to them, and also our actors could talk to them as well. So Brenton, we put him in touch with somebody that dealt with schizophrenia back in Australia, and he really drew on that a lot. Also Joel, who plays the brother, was put in touch with somebody that is the partner of somebody with schizophrenia. So we were really careful about making sure that we were tackling it from a place of knowledge, and most importantly, a place of respect, I guess. And like I said, trying to juggle that, trying to put that on the screen, but also tell a love story was really tough.
Yeah, no, I can only imagine. I think you did a really good job kind of tackling the issue and having it be front and center, but also still having it be part of this overall bright, happy movie. It's kind of interesting that this film comes out right around now, because there have been a couple other films dealing with mental illness that have come out that have all done a very good job of representing it. There's Chemical Hearts on Amazon, and then Words on Bathroom Walls, which was released in theaters. So it seems like maybe this is just an issue that people are finally becoming more comfortable telling the stories, or maybe it's just people are realizing how important these stories are to get out. So I think it's good to have all these perspectives, and especially your film, which has I agree with you. It's a serious issue, but it also is a very watchable experience.
Yeah, look, I love in a way that there's there's more discourse flying around now about mental health and mental illness and stories being portrayed on film. And so I think that's great because it brings an awareness. And also with our story, we wanted it to be, you know, Glenn and I talked a lot about wanting a story that could be positive. You know, like I feel like a lot of stories out there dealing with mental illness are sort of a bit of a doomsday thing where you get diagnosed and your whole life slips away from you. And look, I feel like, you know, obviously your life changes when you have a mental illness, but if you get the right help and have the right people around you, you can live with that and, you know, live a fairly, you know, straightforward life, I guess, hopefully. So we were trying to show a story that showed that despite having these serious problems, you can persevere, you know, and you can find success and love and happiness and all of those things. So, yeah, we were trying to make something positive, I guess.
And one of the other things I really liked about this film is that you not only portrayed, you know, the effect that the illness had on Brenton's character, but also on his family as well. There's a really, really emotional scene with his brother that I really loved. It kind of like struck me when that hit. So, you know, I think that was also a really, really smart choice to kind of show the effect that it has on your loved ones and what those choices can have.
Oh, yeah, thank you. It was, again, even at scripting stage, we were really trying to juggle the balance between Devon, the lead character's journey, and him searching for love, but at the same time, it's a story about brothers and brotherly love and the effect that a mental illness can have on a loved one or a family. And yeah, I really love that side of the film. I think Joel Jackson, who plays Nick, Devon's brother, he was so prepared. Like, he did so much research and talked to people who lived with somebody with schizophrenia, and he just nailed it. Like, I love that warmth and also the frustration. You know, we were trying to show that you may really love someone, but they just, it makes your life a living hell at the same time. But the love sort of overrides that. You know, it's the lengths that people would go to protect somebody in their family with it, or to look out for somebody. You know,
Yeah.
it's very touching.
Yeah, I really liked Joel's character, although I felt a little bad for him because you know, he kind of had to be the more serious, put together person, and then Devon got to be this, you know, dreamer, you know, lover, musician, wanderlust. It was kind of unfair to Joel, but I think he did a fantastic job as well in his character.
Yeah, he was. You know, his audition was fantastic, and I'd seen previous work of his, and then when I met him, he was just so prepared. And yeah, strangely enough, he's actually younger than Brenton in real life. He plays the older brother. There's just something about him that is very sort of grounded and stoic and stable, you know. And he was saying a lot of his family and friends say that about him. So he was sort of the perfect person for that role.
I agree with you. Music is also a big part of this. You know, Devon's character is a musician. There's some really fantastic songs that play throughout the whole ordeal. Was it always part of this story, or was that something that you kind of added to make this a brighter, more watchable story?
He was always, so Devon's character was always a musician, and in the script there was always 3 moments throughout the film where, you know, it's such a tricky movie. It's like a romance, it's a drama, there's a bit of comedy, there's also some musical numbers. I mean, it's pretty wild when we were trying to describe it to certain people. It's hard to encapsulate what the film is in some ways, but the music was always there, and we always knew that because it was so important to Devon as a character that we would need to be really diligent about music throughout the film. And we, you know, obviously didn't have a huge budget, so it was hard to purchase sort of certain songs, but we were really, I hope, sort of clever with the songs that we did choose. But also we had an amazing composer, Matteo Zingalas, who I'd worked with a couple of times, and he just really understood the character so well and understood the need for music and for the music in a way to be really subjective throughout the film. So it places us in Devon's POV wherever possible. So yeah, I was really happy with the music, and it was something that we worked really hard on, and had lots of discussions about and tried lots of things. So, and also, you know, I remember even right at script stage, I gave the script to Matteo, and we were talking about ideas musically way before we shot it as well. So which was really handy.
Awesome. And you just mentioned budget. You know, I know it's always an issue with films, but a film like this, where it's such a long journey that takes place in multiple areas with some pretty big scenes. Like, how did you manage that? Was it kind of always an issue, or did you kind of start from the planning stages and really kind of focus on what you were going to shoot and how?
We always kind of knew, what the sort of rough budget was that we'd be sort of, locked into. And yeah, you're completely right. It's a pretty big sprawling film for an indie feature, and especially a sort of debut indie feature for all of us. We had something like 60 locations. So, we were moving location every day. And for, anybody in the film world knows that's, trying to move a circus around and pack it up and then move to another location is just a huge time suck. So that was a real challenge. And we also had something like 60, no, I think it was about 80 speaking parts in the film as well. So there was a lot of characters and a lot of locations, which were really taxing on the budget. And a number of sequences throughout the film. There's a sequence throughout the film where he's on a train, and that was very sort of VFX heavy as well, which also, challenged us sort of financially. We were lucky to film in a lovely place called Perth, which is on the west coast of Australia. We were all initially from Sydney, but we sort of made the trek across to Perth, and it's a beautiful town, and it was really great. It afforded us a number of like really distinct looks, and we were able to move around. It's a much smaller city than say Melbourne or Sydney, so we were able to sort of park the circus and move it around with not a lot of hassle or effort, and that made shooting like really a hell of a lot easier. So that was great. We had, in Australia we get fantastic support from government and local council and things like that as well, which really helped us.
That's awesome. And you mentioned VFX and you didn't have much budget for it, but I actually kind of think that's a plus. One of the things that with indie movies that can do it smartly is that they limit their VFX because it's costly, but also it kind of can pull you out. So I really liked how there didn't feel like there was much VFX in this film. It really did feel like an organic journey.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. Yeah, we wanted to try and shoot, I'm a big believer in trying to shoot things in camera. I guess it's, I just used to that, I guess, from not having massive budgets to play with in the past. But you can apply some tricks and things like that. So that was good. We were lucky, and we just used VFX, I guess, on certain scenes to sort of polish them up a little bit, really, rather than sort of make them the focus of something. Yeah, our guys did a really nice job.
Definitely. So we talked a little bit about Joel. I think the highlight for the film for me was seeing Brenton and seeing his character. I'm from America, so I didn't know who he was, but I went on and looked him up after, and he's very talented, very big in Australia. So what was it like working with him? It seemed like he just fully committed to this character and just kind of had this inner energy and love throughout the film.
Yeah, I cannot speak highly enough of Brenton Thwaites. Like, he is just a joy to work with. And he came on board the project a good sort of 2 years out from filming, which was great. He really responded to the character. He loved stories about mental illness. He loved that Devon was a bit of a drifter and a musician, and Brenton plays guitar and has a great voice. And so there was a lot of things that he just really loved about the character. He knew that it was really complex and challenging. Playing somebody with schizophrenia or playing a character with any sort of mental illness, I think, is always a tough challenge. And he just dived right in. Like I said, he was, a couple of years out, he was already committed. Then when he arrived, it's funny, he's quite well known in Australia, but in fact, he's probably hasn't worked in Australia for many years. He's actually been in US based for a while, working on some big projects there. So we were really lucky to have him on board, but he was just so, like you say, so committed and so focused on the role. and it was really taxing. He's really putting himself out there and really putting himself on the line in terms of, you know, his musical talents as well. That's actually his voice you hear throughout the film. And he was just so much fun to work with. You know, he turned up on days when he wasn't even needed. He was that committed,
Wow.
which was, you know, as a director, that's a joy. In fact, a lot of the cast members did. They were just so into the film that they would turn up on days just to watch scenes that they loved but weren't a part of, which is amazing. So we were really lucky to have him on board. And yeah, he's got quite the cult following these days as well because of Titans. A lot of people, a lot of audiences would know him from that as well. So that's been really nice for us to get a lot of people that sort of love his work to be able to then carry over onto our film, which is great.
That's fantastic. And also, I'm glad you mentioned that was his voice. That was another one of my questions is, you know, was that him singing and playing? But that's a nice surprise. You know, it's always great when an actor can kind of put themselves out there. Yeah,
he dived right in, and it added a lot of complexity to the scenes where we were obviously filming because we needed, you know, the entire setup to film live and get the sound and everything right. And then at the end of the shoot, we went back into the studio and laid down some fresh vocals and some things like that. But the majority of what you're hearing is sort of live on set, which was great. Yeah, he really dived in. He loved it. I think he enjoyed that aspect of it. You know, he enjoys playing guitar and rocking out. So I think he enjoyed those days.
That's awesome. And I don't want to keep you for too long, so I've just got a couple more questions. You know, one of the things that you get with a digital release is sometimes, you know, you don't get all the kind of extras you would expect on a physical DVD or Blu-ray release. And, you know, one of the things I just really want to see is more of these characters. You know, were there scenes that were cut that might come in as deleted features or things along that nature?
It's such a good question. And it's so funny because it's so weird. We finished the film close to a year ago, and I hadn't watched it since we sort of locked it off. And even though I'm sort of currently in Spain, which is a whole other story, and it's too long a story to tell, but you know, I'm based in LA these days, and I had, you know, used long story short, Friday night I went on, actually purchased the film so I could watch it and show a few friends over here. And it was funny. Sorry?
You had to purchase your own film?
Yeah, I had to. I know. I should have asked, but I decided to purchase it, which was pretty silly. But I could
have sent you my link.
Damn it! I paid you, didn't. And it was so funny watching it after, you know, so long. And there was several scenes that reminded me of some of the scenes that we had cut out. And of course, as a filmmaker at the time, it's horrible cutting scenes because you spend so much time filming them. But there were a few. There was probably, you know, only 5 or 6. They were all quite small, but some of them were more about more focused on the family elements, sort of, you know, Nick and Olivia, the brother and his wife. Just because of trying to streamline the story and, you know, trying to keep the focus on Devon's journey and Devon's POV. And it was kind of heartbreaking losing some of those scenes, to be honest, because I felt like they were really powerful and they were really strong. They really showed, they were scenes that sort of highlighted the dynamics and the struggle of family members and how they deal with somebody with mental illness. So it was funny watching them again. Watching the film again on Friday night, I sort of missed those a little bit. So there are, you know, a handful of scenes, and to be honest, I don't know if we'd release them or not. I'm not sure what the plan is. I certainly, and I've had quite a few people email me about it, and I certainly would love to, because I feel like they were good scenes to share. And I think as a filmmaker, it's always nice kind of, you know, sharing some of those things, especially with fans who have written and taken a real interest in the show. So I need to get on that and find out for you.
Well, fingers crossed. All right, so now I just want to move into, I call it lightning round, but it's just a bunch of short questions that are, you know, tangentially related to the film or the characters. I just want to see if your experiences are similar to the characters. You're free to answer as much or as little as you want. I try to make them very answerable questions, but you can feel free to decline to answer. The first question. Don't be too nervous. The first question, you already answered this, but before filming this, had you been to Sydney? But it sounded like you were based in Sydney.
Yeah, I was born in Sydney, and then have moved around a lot. I grew up out there. Then I went to London. I lived in London for a number of years. Then moved back to Australia for a while, which is where I went to film school. And then about 6 years ago, I made the shift to LA. And I'm back and forth a lot between Sydney and LA these days. So I know the city quite well and quite fond of it.
That's quite a flight too.
Yeah, it's doing that several times a year is tiring.
So before filming this, had you been to Perth?
I had. I had been numerous times. I had, and it's, Australia is it's a huge country. It's the equivalent, I guess, of a flight from from LA to New York. Like it's a massive way. It's just, Australia has very little in the middle. So that flight, similar distance, but just not much in the middle of Australia. I had been there a few times before and had really loved the city, but I'd never really I'd filmed some documentaries there, to be honest, but didn't know the city that well in terms of how I was going to shoot it narratively for a feature film. So Adam, the producer, and I, we actually relocated to Perth about 2 or 3 months earlier before we even started pre-production, just so we could really tackle the amount of locations that we needed to lock in. I'm not answering these really quickly, am I, David? I'm really ruining this lightning round for you.
This is your time. Take as much time as you want. Happy to hear these experiences. Have you ever ridden on a train?
Many times. And long distance. I love long distance trains. Sorry, I was going to be a short answer, but I can't help myself. I love travel. And so, many years ago, I did the Trans-Siberian, across from China all the way through Mongolia and Russia. And I've taken trains across Australia and throughout Southeast Asia. And it's a big sort of love of mine. So I was a big fan of having the sort of train sequence in the movie.
That's awesome. Have you ever hitchhiked?
Yes.
Okay. Maybe not as lovely of a situation.
No, I'm trying to remember. It was like many years ago, and I was like backpacking around Europe, and it was pretty uneventful, I think. So I think I've done it a handful of times, but was told not to. So it's been many years. So the answer was a bit shorter.
Have you ever dined and dashed? No, I haven't. I've been tempted, but I haven't. It was like a terrible thing to do for those people working in restaurants. True story. That was the only question I was unsure if maybe you take maybe you choose not to answer.
If I had, I would admit it, but I never have.
Have you ever changed a tire?
Yes, several times. I grew up on a farm, so I learned to change a tire pretty young. Weirdly enough, I think if it happened now, I'd struggle. I'm too much of a city boy now.
Oh, cars are more complicated now too.
Yeah, that's true.
Is that true advice? You leave it on the ground to loosen the bolts. I mean, it makes perfect sense, but I don't know if that's still the case.
Yeah, I believe so. So that is factually correct.
Perfect. There you go. You learned something new from this film.
Exactly.
Can you play an instrument?
I can murder a guitar really badly.
Murder could be a good word depending on the genre.
Yeah, I have very few regrets in life, but not being able to conquer the guitar is one of them.
I do as well. I've got a guitar back here that I can play like 3 chords on.
Oh, really? I noticed it in the background. I was going to ask if you were a muso.
No, it's just for the review. I can play like 3 chords. I tried to learn and then, promptly realized my fingers weren't strong or fast enough.
Same.
Do you have a good luck charm?
That's such a good question. And I think it's because I used to have one, and I'm trying to think. Essentially, no. Although I get a little bit superstitious at times, but and I'll hold on to certain objects, like a guitar pick or something like that, for a little while, or certain objects that mean something, and then they slowly slip away. But I've never had something that's lasted for a long time. But I like the idea of them,
Yeah, something to kind of ground you when things change or when you need a little bit of reassurance.
Yeah. I think it would have been really handy this year to have one.
I'm sure there's something that you've been holding on to for like 6 months now that you could probably make your good luck charm.
Yeah, my sanity, barely.
Yeah. Oh,
Just holding on to that.
That's a good thing to hold on to.
That's true.
Do you own a vinyl?
Yeah, I'm a huge music head. Ever since I was a kid, I would blow all of my money on buying CDs and vinyl. And all of my vinyl is currently in LA, and I have a little shitty record player there. But yeah, I still love playing vinyl. I just think it's just such a beautiful way to listen to music.
I don't own a vinyl, but I agree. It seems like a wonderful way to listen to music, especially the collections with all the art and everything.
Yeah, I think it's just the aesthetic of it as well. It's the entire experience. It's not just the putting it. I think it's the whole thing of, opening the record up, getting it out of the sleeve, looking at the artwork, maybe reading the sleeve notes, sort of, sitting on the couch and having a listen. It's just something we just don't get a chance to do that often anymore. As soon as I get up in the morning, I just put on Spotify and I've got music playing all day. But it's not like you kind of sit and enjoy it as much as when you had to actually physically get up and change a record over, and there's something nice and tactile about that. So again, it was really lovely to have vinyl throughout the film.
What's your favorite Thai food?
Thai food?
Yeah, Thai is prominently featured.
Yeah. And Thai food is huge in Australia. We have a massive Asian population in Australia, and Thai food, especially in Sydney, there are like literally hundreds of Thai restaurants. I'm a sucker for a green curry. I quite like spicy food, so I really like a chicken green curry.
It's a good choice. And what's the most extreme thing you've done for love?
I jumped on a flight from Sydney to LA to meet a girl that I was talking to online, that we'd been communicating for some time online, and I knew that she was worth flying for. We're still together, so it was definitely a good choice. But yeah, I literally jumped on a flight and flew to LA to meet her. Because I was back in Sydney for work, and I was like, I need to meet this woman. So yeah, that was it.
That's a great story.
Pretty romantic, which is good. Yeah. So
That
I
sounds
told
like
you
a
I
good-
was a sucker for romance.
Yeah, that sounds like a good luck charm too. Sounds like maybe she's your good luck charm.
Yeah, and she's actually in the movie. She plays Matilda in the film on the train.
Awesome.
That's
Awesome.
That's Maria. Yeah, my partner.
Fantastic.
There you go. This lightning round, I'm surfacing all sorts of juicy bits.
There you go. That's why I do it. Everyone always kind of
Right.
enjoys the questions and more stuff comes out.
I love it. Yeah, keep it going.
Well, unfortunately, that's the last one I had. So I guess before you head out, what's next for you?
That's a really good question, and I'm in Spain at the moment. So I'll fill you in a little bit on that. So we actually came here in March to get married, Maria and I, and we had to cancel the wedding about 2 days out because it was right as the pandemic hit.
Oh, wow.
And then we were forced into like a really strict lockdown over here with my mum, who had flown over for the wedding. So the three of us were stuck inside this apartment for 3 months. And it formed like this weird sitcom. Anyway, while I was here and we were waiting for the film to come out and we were sort of in no man's land, not sure what was happening, I filmed an entire TV series on a mobile phone about our lives in lockdown. And so that's out at the moment as well on Facebook. And we've had a couple of million views on it. It's been quite a success, which has been great. It's called Cancelled. It's called Cancelled, and it's on facebook.com/cancelled the series. And then next is actually another. As I mentioned, I did Low Life and then High Life, and I really wanted to round out the trilogy. So the next episode in that is called Midlife, and that is about a 50-year-old woman with anxiety. So, we had depression and bipolar, and we're going to close out the series with the story about a woman with anxiety. So sort of keeping the mental health projects going for a little bit. And then I'm attached to a couple of features back in LA, which is kind of exciting, and hopefully, getting this film out there and things like that, we can get a little bit more traction with those and move on to another feature, which would be great.
Yeah, definitely.
We'll see.
That's I'm glad you're staying busy. That's a really, really smart use of your quarantine time to become Facebook famous. That's brilliant.
I know, it was really weird, and I Maria's obviously, she's an actress, so it was fine, but I've never acted before, and neither has my mum, and it was just the three of us because here we were filming each other on a mobile phone, and weirdly it's got a lot of production values because I couldn't help myself, so it was a very unusual and weird project to kind of put our lives out there. And it's quite personal. It's sort of a story about a relationship that really struggles through quarantine. But it's really kind of hit a nerve, I think, in a good way. People have obviously been going through something very similar all around the world. So it was very kind of timely, and it was kind of a good way to spend our time, I guess. So, and to keep the creative juices flowing, and it's kind of worked out perfect. We just finished that not long ago, and now the film is out, which is exciting to see it finding an audience.
That's fantastic news, and it's it feels like something that probably a lot of people are going through. So it's good to have something that they can relate to available to stream and get some new content out there.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's been fun. It's been it's such an up and down year, but it's ending better than it started at the moment.
It's always good to have some bright stories from this year, because this has been such a wild card year.
It's crazy.
So thank you so much for talking. This has been fantastic. You can check out I Met a Girl on video on demand. It's available on pretty much every streaming service, so you can check it out at home and watch it with your loved ones, watch it over and over. It's a movie that really has this wonderful balance of serious topics, but also bright themes and music and love. So it's definitely a good thing to check out during your quarantine. And thank you so much for talking to me. Thanks
so much, David. I really had a lot of fun chatting. That was very nice.
Yes, this was a blast. Thank you. That was Luke Eve, director of I Met a Girl, an all-new Australian love dramedy that deals with some mental issues and a crazy journey through Australia. It's available on demand through Gravitas Ventures on pretty much any digital distributor, so you can check it out there. And as always, please go to watcherpass.com for all your movie reviews, interviews, and recommendations. Thank you.